Hare Krishna. Omagyantimirandasya. Jnananjana Shakti. Just share the screen. There is a question how Bilvamangal Thakur, even though he just heard once from Chintamani, immediately his heart got transformed. I said I'll answer the question. Before we start, just that is a very interesting point to understand. Here, what happened to Bilvamangal Thakur? It's a very important thing. Bilvamangal Thakur, he was actually a very big Pandit. He knows Bhagavatam by heart. And that time people were very learned. And he was also a very learned person. And first important thing to understand is when there is emptiness of heart, when it comes, that is, when there is humility, then there is some who feel there is emptiness in the heart. This is a very important state a person reaches. If a person is not yet reached a state of complete purity, he does not understand that the most important thing that is needed. And he will not feel that I need this prema. But when he knows that, okay, the emptiness is heart is, when that time, that moment prema will appear in the heart. The void does not last long. It is immediately filled. And that's actually what happened to Bilvamangal Thakur. His heart was completely empty suddenly. This is a miracle that happened to him. He was living in Krishnaveni, bank of Krishnaveni river, the west bank. He was a great scholar. He was knowing all Bhagavatam by heart. He knows Sanskrit perfectly. He was sitting on a kusha grass. He was meditating. He is meditating like a yogi, but he's not meditating on Lord, but he was meditating on Chintamani, who was living on the eastern bank. Now, Chintamani, that time, they were very, very cultured people and very learned and educated, very quality of people is very high. And Chintamani, like not like just modern women of the same profession, but they used to sing. And they were very professional in singing. When they sing, they could arouse the feelings in the heart of other people. Especially, they can arouse the feeling that will give them higher essence or whatever. So this is what is their talent. And Bilvamangal Thakur, she is able to attract such great scholarly people. Means the way they are able to sing and make their feelings arouse. And Bilvamangal Thakur, he was also attracted to her. And when Chintamani sang, Bilvamangal Thakur could not do anything. He just listened to her singing. And she began to sing something, and that stormed his heart. And now this is a rainy day, heavy rain is coming, and suddenly there was a thunder and everything. And after seeing the clouds, he remembered. But unfortunately, he did not remember Krishna, but he remembered Chintamani. Because whatever the object of Bilvamangal Thakur, it is remaining on Chintamani. And because when you love someone, everything remains of that person whom we love. Clouds came, thunder came, everything came, and heavily pouring. And then he said, okay, because in South India we have this. Now he was looking on the eastern bank and he decided, no, this is a big storm in the heart also for him. He says, I cannot do anything. I just want to go her. I don't want anything. I want to be with her. I don't want to be in the eastern bank. I want to, sorry, west. I want to be in the east. Now he rushed to the river, then he and could not think anything. And suddenly he saw something is floating. And he saw it's a corpse, but he took it. He crossed the river. and he walked through the mud and everything. And then he rushed to her house and he started knocking. The house was closed and there was thundering and rattling. No one heard it. He realized that nothing could work. Then he grabbed something, and because it was like the snake, and he pulled it up and he went. And then he fell at the house, the door, and then Chintamani comes and he looks at him. And this is, of course, you might have heard many details. Then, when they went and dragged him into the house, she brought him to his senses. And when he came to his senses, her lips it twisted in disgust. She looked at him and said, "Arey, what are you, fool? Look at you. How could you do this?" And she told her, "We sing, but we sing out of profession." And she said that for the sake of such silly things, you are spoiling your life. It's a poison of wine. It's whatever coming for. And I cheat everyone. People come to me, we cheat, and we play all these instruments and all. But we are interested in money. We are not interested in the people who are coming. You are wasting your life unnecessarily in this way. Now, when she spoke this, why are you wasting your life? No one understands what. No. Now, all night she gave him nice upadesh about Radha and Krishna. She herself was a devotee of Krishna. She told him that when I saw that what people are doing, to what extent people are going crazy, understand everything. And then Bilwangal Thakur, he understands, yes, I am living tomorrow and I will chant. So whole night she could teach him. And her here, she has some love for Krishna. And that's why she could give that feelings to Bilwangal Thakur. And not only that, when she saw him, he saw him when he saw that smile of disgust in her, especially in her beloved, that he was and how she was feeling so much disgusted, his heart became empty. That's actually what happened. So we was discussing, no? When heart becomes empty, Krishna's love enters. So when she saw him, this is actually what happened. When he saw that, this woman don't love me anymore. Immediately heart became empty. And many times it happens. People get this realization that the person whom he thought he will love, he does not love him. That emptiness comes, but that is not replaced with Krishna. That is a problem. They replace with either entertainment industry or some bad habits. That's actually what is happening to people. But because Bilwangal Thakur, he was a he was already knowing Bhagavatam and he has so many things. Immediately that entered. And because that is such a great humiliation for him. When he saw that she was much purer and cleaner than him, when he realized that everything for her was no longer material life, at that moment his heart was cleansed. And we heard the songs, how she began to sing about Radha Krishna, about her love for Radha Krishna. Then he also left home and he goes to his Guru Somagiri, who gives him mantra, and then he leaves the next day. Like that. He know that then because our heart is cleansed from inside, when nothing prevents the super soul to lead us where he wants. This is actually what happens when the interference of consciousness does not prevent us from hearing how the Paramatma is guiding in the heart. Then all these our stupid thoughts, ambitions, some images which we come from ourselves, goals and all these things, they don't interfere us. When all this ceases to obstruct, then a real pure desire appears. The desire to, and that appears in this empty heart. At that moment, then there is the flow of prema appears. The heart which is fully empty, Krishna will fill it. And this small thing I wanted to share. And then here, Sukadeva Goswami, when he completes it about explaining about yogi, he tells about Brahma. This is very interesting. Now, he gives the example of Brahma. That actually Srimad Bhagavatam ends with the second chapter or second canto in one way, because Parikshit Maharaj answered, Sir, Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami one question: what should a person who is preparing die to do? And all people should prepare to die. So most people think that they will never die, and this will happen unnoticed to them, and that there is need to prepare for it. And then Maharaj Sukadeva Goswami answered that okay, just think about Krishna. That's all. And then he understands that people don't understand this properly, so he goes further. But the point is, he here gives example of Brahmaji, that Brahma, he did not waste his life. He did not go to, he did not want to watch movies from Swargaloka. He don't want to see the Apsaras there, and he didn't want to see the serials there. And he said that there cannot be any person more smarter than Brahma. He has 4 heads. Now, we may have one goal, but Brahma has 4 goals. And this Brahma, with all his intelligence, who knows all the Vedas, all the 4 Vedas, and was carefully studied it 3 times, and then he comes to the conclusion: no need to spend and waste our time in this material world. Better go to spiritual world. That's what Brahma's conclusion is in this verse we have read. So the great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of mind, studied Vedas 3 times, and he comes to this conclusion. That's what. And then he says that personality of God is Sri Krishna in every living being, along with the individual soul, and this fact is pursued and hypnotized in our acts of seeing and taking help from intelligence. So this is now another point here is that Sukadeva Goswami says that Brahma, he thought for a long time, studied, and then come to this conclusion. He is our Sampradaya Acharya also. And now he says, if a person is intelligent, then now next thing he tells, if he is intelligent, and then he can easily understand that God is, even if he did not see him. How can he understand God? He gives a very simple reason. If he has a mind, he can understand that somehow or other everything is organized by some kind of power here. And now here, this is a very interesting verse. I said just few points we need to know, because in this 35th verse, here it says that in every living being, along with the individual soul, and this fact is pursued by hypnotized in your acts of seeing and taking help from intelligence. It's a very important verse. It is not just given. There are 2 reasons how to know that we are not the body, spirit, soul, and how to exist. So this is the logic, one of the logic which Sukadeva Goswami is trying to explain us. And he says it's very simple. If we have mind, we can understand somehow or other everything is organized by some kind of power here. And that how a rational person can understand God. And he says that by feeling it, then we realize that at the end that God cannot, but he is already there, and there is some person who is managing this world. There is one person who is fully in control, and I am fully understand that they depend on God, and I am not independent. He says that in essence, living entities are instrumental, and he says that if relation to our feeling, how can we prove that there is soul? There are 2 aspects only, very simple. A person can prove there is soul by understanding that fact that I see means there is a soul, and this propensity to observe observation is one of the aspects of the soul. And then the second property is observe and action. Because I'm able to observe and able to act, that's why I'm not the body spirit soul. That's what Jiva Goswami's commentary on this verse. Jiva Goswami gives a big commentary on this verse, and he gives these two reasons. We all know that these are two properties. We observe, we see, we are aware, we experience, and then we enjoy in some way, we are acting. When we have this idea that I am acting and something depends on me, exactly same thing is with this is a rational feeling, and this proves that there is soul. Three people are the cause. Three things. Soul is the cause of activity. Super soul is cause of activity. Bhagwan is cause of activity. So these are the two. Because the soul is there, that's why my body is able to function. The matter is able to move because the soul is there inside. I am able to observe things around. That means somebody is inside is observing. I am able to act because the soul is there that is making me act. A table cannot act. Table cannot observe. Body is doing. So this is the logic that is given here. And now he says that if you look closely at everything happens, we can understand that there is this is one way. That another important thing is there is one person who is in control of everything. Krishna uses as instrument. He is organizing everything, and the whole world is a mechanism, and it cannot have two rulers. Because I am also ruling and he is also ruling, not possible. Only Krishna rules. I am an instrument of Krishna. If in the house there are two rulers, there should be one boss in the house. If there are two boss in the house, there is a problem. Similarly, in this universe, if there is only one boss, Krishna, and who am I? I am instrument. Whatever he materializes, then it problems. Like in a car, if you have two steerings, two clutches, two brakes, two accelerators, then it is a problem. We need to have somebody is moving right, somebody is. Similarly, in this world, there is only one person under whose everything is working. That is Krishna. We are only instrument. And that is the understanding of this verse given by Jiva Goswami. You can see that someone is watching us all the time, and we are acting. And this is how the law of karma is. If a person is intelligent, then he can easily understand this. Next two verses are very important. Please pay attention. We will just read this purport also. It's a very big purport, but it's important purport. Prabhupada writing, the general argument of common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender to him or render transcendental loving service unto him? So this is another argument, that unless I see, I cannot surrender, because seeing is very important for us to act and to develop a desire. How can I develop a desire if I am not seeing Krishna? How can I develop a desire to become his devotee or start loving? In this world now, anything we have to see, when we see the advertisements, commercials, then we develop a desire. That's why the commercials, they are paid so much. They give this advertisement, they show the object, make you hear, and then the image will come. Say they will show you a nice, beautiful beach, and people are nicely swimming there and sitting under the sun and all. And when this image is seen, immediately you will feel, oh, let me go with my wife, and I also want to enjoy there. This type of desires will appear. That means they will show this, especially they want to show you, make you, they will take you to the new building apartments and show you so that you will purchase. But here the argument is, I did not see only Lord, how can I develop a desire? To such a common man, here a practical suggestion given by Srila Sukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceived by our present material senses, but one is convinced of the presence of Lord by practical service attitude. There is a revelation by the Lord's mercy. So when we start rendering service, when we start rendering service in terms of chanting, hearing Bhagavatam, then what happens? Lord will, out of His mercy, He will reveal. And such a pure devotee of Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is a form of gratitude to Paramatma, guidance of the by the Paramatma, a plenary portion of personality. Now, very important, na? We at the end of our life only shelter for his Prabhupada purports. There is nobody who will save us. We have to be very, very careful in reading Prabhupada purport, understanding that is the source of our shelter or protection. Prabhupada especially came for delivering all of us, and no other means are there to help us. That's why we have to pay little attention and try to understand what Prabhupada is saying. And many of the great devotees who left their body at the end of life, they give the same. They take so much shelter of Prabhupada purports, and they have perfected, because that gives them that faith and confidence. Who is there to help us to go to spiritual world? We don't have any connection only. Our only connection is Prabhupada. There is no hope for us otherwise. That's why we need to be very attentive and careful when we are going through Prabhupada purports. And Prabhupada is giving such a important knowledge for us. He's telling just develop this practical service attitude and Lord's mercy will come. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize even for a common man. The procedure is as follows. How to realize that? Prabhupada is telling. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. We are discussing that. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hands, the legs, the hair, head, and the limbs of all his bodily parts and parcels, but as such the hand, the leg, and head, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between seer and seen. Because we are able to see means I am separate. That's why I am able to see. I can observe. I can observe. And that second is now by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations, the senses of perceptions and of action. So two things, we perceive and we act. And that is to say, our five perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, as well as five sense of action, namely hands, legs, speech, evacuation organs, and reproductive organs, and also three subtle senses, namely mind, intelligence, and ego. 13 senses in all are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross and subtle form of mental energy. So these are given to us. Somebody is supplying all these things to us. And it is equally evident that our objects of perceptions are nothing but the products of inexhaustible permutations and combinations of a form taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the object of perception are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. Such a nice point Prabhupada is telling. You have to read it again to understand. Please don't think that we already know this. No, you can hear what Prabhupada is giving logic. He is giving such a nice logic. Is as this conclusively proves what it is proving, that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion. So we cannot perceive or act independently. We are undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy. So all these five elements and all these 13 which is listed now, they're actually controlling this. We conclude that he who sees is the spirit, and the senses as well as objects of perception are material. That's what Prabhupada is telling. You can go through it on your own again and try to understand. Such a nice logic. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving at certain point in organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has always produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Ideal talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are most foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities, and this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Is the point. No need to just imagine that matter spirit comes. No, Prabhupada is so clear. Now, with a little further use of intelligence, Prabhupada is giving some more. It's all from Jiva Goswami. We come to the point of accepting that the things which are seen cannot be animate unless someone is the user or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the directions of the superior being. Such intelligence is all pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like the direction of a father given to his son. The higher authority who is present and residing within every living being is the supreme self. This is another. Prabhupada is trying to make us understand how to understand Paramatma in the heart. This para is very nicely explained because intelligence gives us direction and some higher force is giving us. Now, for us to understand this knowledge, who is giving the intelligence to understand this Prabhupada purport? Paramatma in the heart is only giving that intelligence for us. That's what Prabhupada is trying to tell. We need to take advantage of this. One who fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man. We need to use this intelligence to understand Shastra. We have to work hard for this. Now, Prabhupada gives, now he proved that we are not the body, spirit, soul. Then he told us to understand how Paramatma in the heart is guiding us. Now he goes further. He says, at this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conducted by arrangement of mental nature. Yet, we are ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perceptions and actions are moving because we are identifying the self with the mental body, and the superior principle of the super soul is guiding and supplying us according to our desires. So, two things. One is, we are perceiving that we are doing, but actually it is done by the material nature, and it is actions are moving because we are identifying with the self, and the superior principle, super soul, is guiding and supplying us according to our desires. Now, Prabhupada says, by taking advantage of this guidance of the super soul in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusions that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fencing ourselves to be the possessor and doer, possessors and doer. Our freedom consists in orienting our desires either towards the ignorant material misconceptions or the true spiritual conceptions. So we can choose between the guidance of Paramatma or our whimsical understanding. But Prabhupada says we can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the super soul Paramatma to be our friend and guide, and by dovetailing our intelligence with the superior intelligence of the Paramatma. The super self and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the super self and individual self are both qualitatively one and distinct from matter. But the super self and individual self cannot be on an equal level, because the super self gives direction or supplies intelligence, and individual self follows the directions, and thus actions are performed properly. The individual is completely dependent on the direction of super self, because every step the individual soul follows the directions of the super self in the matter of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, and willing. And Prabhupada says this is the last one. Nice. So far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion there are three identities, namely matter, spirit, and super spirit. Now, if you go to Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic literatures, we can further understand that the three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and super spirit, are dependent on the personality of Godhead. So now we are coming to the fourth level, that is Bhagavan. The super self is a partial representation or plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representations only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottama. So what is the logic Prabhupada is telling? Array, Lord is not order carrier, not that he's always sanctioning whatever you want. That is done by Paramatma feature. Lord will not sanction. You go to Krishna and says, I want this, I want this. Krishna says, forget about it. You cannot get from Krishna. Paramatma feature, you go to Paramatma, he may do it. Krishna will not do. That is why, that means there are three doers, soul, super soul, and Bhagavan. Super soul only gives sanctions according to the living entity's desires and his karma. But Bhagavan is not like that. He will do everything. He is not beyond karma. Don't, even you have karma, no karma, Krishna wants, he will do it like that. And the absolute person. Realization of the super soul by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization, and by the process of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and practically by the grace of love. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam, the further explanation of science of God. So if we give up our obstinity and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence sitting within the same bodily tree, like the bird sitting on another bird, certainly the purport of the revealed information of the Vedas will become clear to our vision, and there will be no difficulty in realizing the Supreme Personality of God. The intelligent man, therefore, after many births of such use of intelligence, surrenders himself at the lotus feet of Vasudeva. And then there are two conclusive verses. These are the important verses of this chapter. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan harir sarvatra sarvada shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyo bhagavanana. O king, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember Supreme Personality of Godhead always and everywhere. Srila Sukadeva Goswami begins, Prabhupada says, Srila Sukadeva Goswami begins this verse with the word tasma, therefore, because in a previous verse he has already explained that there is no auspicious means for salvation other than the sublime process of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga process is practiced by the devotees in different methods like hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of Lord, worshipping, praying, rendering service in love, becoming friendly, and offering all that one may possess. All 9 methods are bona fide methods, and either all of them, some of them, or even one of them can bring about the desired results for the sincere devotee. But out of all these 9 different methods, the first one, namely, hearing, is the most important function in the process of Bhakti Yoga. Without hearing sufficiently, see, nice point, Prabhupada says, without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any of the other methods of practice. And for hearing, and from hearing only, all the Vedic literatures are there, compiled by authorized persons like Vyasadeva, who is powerful incarnation of Godhead. And since it has been ascertained that the Lord is the super soul of everything, he should therefore be heard and glorified everywhere and always, This is the special duty of human being. When a human being gives up the process of hearing about the all-pervading personality of God, he becomes victim of hearing rubbish transmitted by man-made machines. Missionary is not bad because through the mission one can take advantage of hearing about the Lord. But because missionary is used for ulterior purpose, it is creating rapid degradation in the standard of human civilization. It is said here that it is incumbent upon the human being to hear about the Lord, and scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are made for that purpose. Living beings other than human beings have no ability to hear such Vedic literature. If human society gives itself to the process of hearing the Vedic literature, it will not become a victim to the impious sounds vibrated by impious men who degrade the standard of total society. And last one, hearing is solidified by process of chanting. One who has perfectly heard from perfect sources becomes convinced about the all-pervading personality of Godhead and thus becomes enthusiastic in glorifying the Lord. All the great acharyas like Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Saraswati Thakur, even in other countries, Muhammad Christ and others have all extensively glorified the Lord by chanting always and in every place because the Lord is all pervading. It is essential to glorify Him always and everywhere. In the process of glorifying the Lord, there should be no restriction of time and space. This is called Sanatan Dharma Bhagavatam. And then last shloka is also very important. This is पिबन्ति ये भागवत आत्मनः सतां कथामृतं शरणपुटेषु संवृतां पुनन्ति ते विषय विदूषिताश्रयं व्रजन्ति तच्चरण सरोरिहान्तिकम्. Those who drink through oral reception fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. Prabhupada, the suffering of human society are due to a polluted aim of life, namely longing toward material nature. The more human society engages in exploitation of undeveloped material resources for sense gratification, the more it will be entrapped by illusory material energy of the Lord, and thus the distress of the world will be intensified instead of diminished. The human necessities of life are fully supplied by the Lord in shapes of food grains, milk, fruits, wood, stone, sugar, silk, jewelries, cotton, salt, water, vegetables, etc. in sufficient quantity to feed and care for human race of the world as well as living beings on each and every planet within the universe. The supply source is complete and only a little energy by the human being is required to get his necessities into proper channel. There is no need of machines and tools or huge steel plants for artificially created comforts of life. Life is never made comfortable by artificial needs, but by plain living and high thinking. The highest perfectional thinking for human society is suggested here by Sudhe Goswami, namely sufficiently hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. For men in this age of Kali, when they have lost the perfect vision of life, this Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchlight by which to see the real path. Srila Jiva Goswami Pad has commented on the Kathamritam mentioned in this verse and has indicated Srimad Bhagavatam to be nectarian message of the personality of Godhead. By sufficient hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, the polluted aim of life, namely lording it over material nature, will subdue, and people in general in all parts of the world will be able to live a peaceful life of knowledge and bliss. And then we'll see, thus by the process of Bhakti Yoga, directly accepted or suggested in this verse, by sufficient hearing of the transcendental message of Lord, the material contamination is directly eliminated without one's attempting to contemplate the impersonal Virata conception of Lord. And by practicing Bhakti Yoga, if the performer is not purified for material contamination, he must be a pseudo devotee. For such an imposture, there is no remedy for being free from material entanglement. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purport of second canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord in the Heart. Okay. Question is, what is the difference of emptiness of Bilmangal Thakur and purification happens in a yogi? Yeah, there is humility, that is the main difference. And there is humility in the heart, then there is emptiness that is experienced. For a yogi, they are also humble, they are humble in mode of goodness, but they still have their, but another advantage is they may get that humility and they may have some, but they don't have association of a devotee who will fill that emptiness with Krishna. There the difference comes for them. For a devotee, the advantage is the emptiness is filled. And with the love, when we feel that humility, we feel the emptiness in heart. And then we hear from a great devotee, immediately their love for Krishna will fill our heart. But for a yogi, that is not an advantage. He will fill with Brahman and he will enter into Brahman. That is the problem. Okay, we have completed second. From tomorrow, we will do third chapter. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.